A very good morning to everyone and happy International Women's Month. My name is Julie and I'm privileged to be on the board for the Society for Wings, or Wings for short, especially during this very special month, which looks at celebrating women all around the world. Wings is the only non-profit in Singapore singularly focused on helping women in their later years with education programs and activities around our core pillars of health, financial security, and more importantly, helping women form good relationships with the community and the people around them. This special webinar series, which is organized by Wings and Access Health, is one such example of the activities that we hold. This time focusing on women at 40, with the goal of helping them achieve their physical, mental, and emotional goals as they enter this very important chapter in their lives. I hope many of you also had a chance to tune into the other webinars that we recently had, which really provided great insights on topics such as thinking positive, staying strong, managing osteoporosis, menopause, and very importantly, preparing for all the changes that we'll likely face in our lives. Today, I'm delighted to moderate the last, but certainly not the least, of our 4 webinars for women turning 40. The topic is on the very, very important subject of communication. I strongly believe that communication is one of the most important tools that really helps us to build strong relationship and bonds with our family members, friends, and even colleagues. And this becomes increasingly important as we transition through different periods in our lives and also within multi-generational families. And today we have some amazing women who will be sharing their expert insights on this very important topic. We have Dr. Kanwaljit Soin, Ms. Linda Chua, and Ms. Cecilia Pang. I will be introducing them more fully in just a bit, but before we begin the session, we have a special message from Madam Rahayu Mazam, our Parliamentary Secretary for Health. She's sorry that she's not able to join our webinar in person, but has kindly recorded a special message for all of us.
Good morning, ladies. I'm very happy to be here with all of you today at this webinar session. I see that unprecedented times like this have not hampered your desire to learn, and it is encouraging to see many of you taking time off on a Saturday to focus on and learn more about improving your health. As women, we fulfill multiple roles and juggle so many responsibilities. Within the family, we play a very integral part. We're caring mothers, loving wives, and beautiful daughters. Out in the workforce, we are diligent employees with careers. Many of us are also active volunteers in the community. And as we strive to perform our duties to the best of our ability, I understand just how easy it is for us to get caught up in our daily lives and to lose sight of our own health. Very often, we end up sacrificing our own well-being in order to care for our loved ones. It is precisely for this reason, because we play such an important role in the lives of our loved ones, that we must make the effort to ensure that we remain healthy and take good care of ourselves. Only when we prioritize our own health and well-being will we be able to continue to take care of our families and be able to contribute to the workforce and the community at large. Today is all about inspiring women to embrace healthy living and to make the right choices for ourselves. This is especially critical since we women have a long life expectancy, longer than the men. I'm sure many of us cherish our independence and would like to continue to be independent throughout our golden years. For that to happen, we must start investing in good habits now if we haven't already done so. In fact, forming and maintaining healthy habits are the best investments we can make in our lives. Remember, it's never too late to start living healthy. The Women's Health Committee, set up by the Health Promotion Board to improve the health status of women in Singapore, believes that improving the health of women is important to improving their lives in general. In doing so, the overall health of the nation improves. as women are a key pillar of health in our communities and families. This committee comprises diverse leaders and advocates for women's health from across the people, private and public sectors. With the wealth of experience in their respective fields, these advocates will come together to formulate strategies and identify opportunities to address key health concerns that affect women along our lifespan in the form of a women's healthcare roadmap. This roadmap will help HPB to formulate sustainable programs designed for women. Among us, we are very grateful to have the President of WINGS, Ms. Beh Ching, who empowers women to age well by staying healthy, being financially secure, and staying socially engaged. As the chairperson of the committee, I would like to use this opportunity to thank Ms. Beh and WINGS for their commitment and support that they have been giving to HPB and the committee. As we are also celebrating International Women's Day this month, we want to specially commemorate and celebrate SG women. We want to thank all our mothers, wives, daughters, sisters, career women, women advocates for playing such important roles in our lives and in keeping our families and community healthy. I wish you all good health and an enriching experience as you embark on your journey of discovering how you can live a better, healthier life. The life you've always aspired to have. Do it for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Rahayu Mazam, our Parliamentary Secretary for Health, and very nicely said. And certainly we look forward to many more collaborative efforts around building health among our women. And now I'm delighted to kick off our webinar for today on Let's Talk. To begin, it is indeed my honor to welcome the founding president of WINGS, Dr. Kalwanjit Soin. Dr. Soin has been an amazing role model for me, and I know for many women in Singapore. She is multi-talented and has worn many hats over the years. Kani is an orthopedic and hand surgeon, a former nominated Member of Parliament of Singapore, and is also a founding member of AWARE, and also an author of Silver Shades of Grey, Memos for Successful Aging in the 21st Century. With increasing longevity, Kani believes that it's time to move away from the traditional linear approach in managing the life stages. This is especially relevant as we live longer and where 4-generational families are becoming the norm. So Kani, can I invite you to share your insights on this increasingly rising and important trend and what we need to do to start managing and preparing for these changes? Kani.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Julie. Can you all hear me? Okay, first of all, I would like to thank, WINGS board and Julie and Teck Ching and Fung Meng for inviting me to be on this webinar. I am very excited because this is very special. I consider WINGS as my adopted daughter. And I wanted to grow, to continue to do things for women so that they lead healthy, happy, secure lives and engage productively in the community. So now I want to, can we have the first slide, please, Ivan? Okay, let's get talking about life and its transitions. For many of us, life just happens. We are born, we are educated, and then we start work. Most of us get married and have children. Some of us are not married and look after our older folk. Some of us are in the sandwich generation and have to look after the young and the old. We all try to cope with work and care responsibilities and create some balance in life. Of course, in the last 1 year, COVID-19, lockdown and the circuit breaker have been our main preoccupation. Most of us are trying to cope with the present and have no time or energy to think much ahead or plan for the future. Next slide, please. But without us recognizing it consciously, a great change in life has come about. Life expectancy has been increasing at a fast pace. The length of our lives has been increasing 3 months each year, or about 3 years every decade. And on a daily basis, life expectancy is increasing by about 6 hours. And while we are participating in this webinar, our lives are being lengthened by quite a few minutes. So we are not wasting any time whatsoever. This lengthening of our lives is real and it's affecting all of us. Singapore has been ranked near the top in the world for the longest average life expectancy. In addition, women live about 5 years longer than men. And so, dear friends, all of you attending this webinar, miraculously, many of you in the audience, especially the young ones, can expect to become centenarians and super centenarians, that is living beyond 110 years. So we have to think about that. Next slide, please. Ivan, thank you. But unfortunately, I'm not pointing a finger of blame, but I think it's just that not all of you have internalized the new reality. You are living and planning your lives according to the old formula, a 3-stage linear life plan. According to this plan, people are educated and trained for the labor market in their youth. They then work for a living in the middle years of their life and finally spend the rest of their lives in retirement. Many of you are under the impression that with a longer life, there will be a prolonged period of retirement, and that is the only change in the trajectory of your life. The reality is, and that is also the good news, that people are becoming chronologically older, but biologically younger. Singapore is also near the top in the world for the longest average healthy life expectancy. People are therefore younger for longer, and thus the standard chronological measure of age makes little sense than ever. I'm 79 and I'm still working. Therefore, all you younger women need to reframe your life course and redefine what living longer means. This is going to be your biggest challenge, and you are the generation that will face this huge new transition. Other transitions pale before this because many of you are probably not aware of it and are not preparing for it. Next slide, please. The historian observed that our significantly longer lives invite us to draw up a fresh map of life. The new multi-stage life will consist of breaking down the linearity of your life course and interspersing your lives and careers with periods of care work, parenting, volunteering, learning, or leisure. It's a full life. This sort of a life plan might allow people of your age to raise children first and then start a career around the age of 40, and then change career paths thereafter at any stage in life, or go to an institution of learning at some time and reskill yourself for a different career. Or you could start work early and then take a break to join an institution of higher learning after that, and then have children if you feel like it. Instead of a 3-stage life, you have to reconfigure your lifespan to a multi-stage life. This new concept will have much more flexibility and in many more transitions, and can offer opportunities to live life fully at all ages and stages, and to contribute to society throughout one's life. To achieve this new paradigm, there's an urgent need to create awareness in the individuals and in institutional attitudes and behavior. System changes at the corporate, government, and societal levels have to occur to support this new and personalized life course of individuals with all its extra functional decades of life, and thus reap the dividends of longevity. One of the unintended consequences of the three-stage life that it has led to an institutional separation of the young, the middle-aged, and the old. The multi-stage life will reverse this isolation by generations because age will not coincide with your stage in life. Next slide. Let's look at education. This should not just be the first stage of life, but lifelong, and this is now being encouraged in Singapore. However, the situation now is that most educational institutions are age stratified: school, college, polytechnic, university, etc. And this creates boundaries between ages and encourages ageism. Young people miss out on opportunities of being mentored by older people, while older people lose opportunity of interacting with younger people. Multi-stage life education throughout different ages of life will break down age boundaries and encourage cross-generational blending. Next slide, please. Schools, colleges, and universities will have to create spaces where young, middle-aged, and older people from all walks of life can acquire knowledge and skills together and get to know each other enough to build mutual respect and meaningful friendships, and thus do away with ageism. One practical example of this common space where all generations can learn something together is in the study of space exploration. This can include school children, young adults, and older people. Next slide. Let us now look at the work arena. Technology and globalization are disruptive forces, but so is longevity. People will want to work into their 80s and beyond. For this to increase, some conditions are necessary. Next slide. Older people should be offered the option of working part-time or retraining for other types of work. The organization should recognize the value of experience and human capital and organize the transfer of skills between generations. Lifelong learning has to be the norm for all. Next slide. Decreasing fertility, increasing life expectancy, 2018 became a landmark year for Singapore, as the number of those over 65 became equal to those under 15. Wrinkles and pimples started taking equal billing. This means that households have fewer children and more grandparents and great-grandparents. We are seeing the emergence of 4 generations within a family living at the same time. Even if they're not in the same household, it can create opportunities for older generations to challenge and mentor the young, and for the young to support the old. Next slide. As older generations live longer and healthier lives, and as they continue to work or volunteer their services, they are creating human, financial, and social capital. Social capital refers to the creation of relationships among persons that facilitate their actions and interactions. For example, grandparents play an important role in creating and protecting the family's social capital in times of conflict, in, for example, divorce, and in times of peace, in value transmission, care, and support of family members. Next slide. Since the mission of WINGS is to ensure that women age confidently and securely, I would like to remind you that women age differently from men, physically and physiologically, culturally, and emotionally. Therefore, we women have to take these facts into our planning for our future. And the next two panel speakers will elaborate on this. Next slide. I've already mentioned that life expectancy for women is about 5 years longer than for men. And because we tend to marry older men than ourselves, we are more likely to be widowed in old age. Also, in the case of divorce or spousal death, women are less likely to remarry than men. Thus, it becomes a truism that most women must anticipate singlehood in their later years and have to plan for it. My last slide. I would like to end up with a grandmother's story. I have 8 grandchildren. From a biological purpose point of view, let us now ponder on the fact that about half a woman's life will be spent in the post-fertile period. What evolutionary purpose or relevance can this have? One rationale for this phenomenon is explained by the grandmother hypothesis. In all primates and mammals, the young, after weaning, collect food for themselves. This does not happen in the human baby. Grandmothers confer an evolutionary advantage to the human race. How do they do that? They gather food to feed the babies, and the little ones they gather food to feed the babies of the little ones. And it has been shown that having grandmothers around reduces child mortality quite considerably, and thus gives babies a long protected time to grow large brains. Also, because grandmothers look after the little ones, the younger reproductive females are freed of this chore and can instead have more babies, and thus increase the total fertility rate in Singapore. Thus, because of grandmothers, humans have had the opportunity to develop smarter brains and also enjoy longer lifespans than apes. In ending, I would like to salute the relationship between grandmas and grandchildren. May it thrive forever. And thank you so much, dear audience, for spending your Saturday morning to listen to the 3 panel speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kani. That was so beautifully and so well said. Thank you. And, 8 grandchildren, I think that's wonderful. And I personally truly believe that grandparents, especially grandmothers, are truly a gift to all of us. So, really well said. Thank you. And thank you for setting the stage. And I really do have more questions for you on this very interesting topic. But let me come back to you in a little bit, and maybe let's go to the views of our next panelists. So delighted to have Linda Chua. Linda is a clinical psychologist at Call Psychological and Counseling Services. Linda believes in helping clients realize their potential in coping with life difficulties and life transitions. She is part of a crisis response team and conducts training workshops on mental wellness, psychological first aid, and clinical related issues. Linda also advocates the promotion of mental health awareness and maintaining emotional wellness. So Linda, Kani talked about the multi-stage life, and the many more different phases women may experience in their lives. If life transitions are inevitable and they will keep evolving, how can we get ourselves ready for them? Would love to hear your views.
Yeah, firstly, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here on this Saturday morning. And Kani, that was a beautiful thing that you put together into context, because I think it's high time that many women realize this too. Yeah, so which is very right and accurate that there's no more a linear progression for things, right? We don't have to go A, B, C, D. Sometimes we can jump from A to E or something of that sort and still be happy and contented, satisfied with what we do. So with this change that is evolving continually, as you say, Julie, what would be very helpful for each and every one of us is to actually have an open-mindedness. You know, so to be open to change is one very important factor to help us get along in life, because like we said, every day there's some new thing coming up, and you know, technology itself per se already moves very fast on its own, right? There's always changes there. And then the world environment is also changing. I mean, like COVID-19 perhaps caught everyone unaware. We took for granted that everything was going to be healthy and happy and all that, but we never thought that a pandemic would strike us in this kind of age and century, right? So to be open to change, to adapt changes, and to be actually embracing new norms are actually helpful as well. Because imagine if you were to stay stuck in what you believe in terms of, oh, this is what I do every day from 9 to 5, and therefore I have to keep on doing it. It can become or it can make one very jaded as well, right? So to say that I'm always going to be stuck here and do this job 9 to 5, go back, cook for the kids, maybe, you know, etc. and all that. Yes, that was a part of you or part of your wife and mother responsibility when you first got married, etc. and all that. However, there are points in your life when you can actually observe what are the changes going on around you, and how you can actually tweak your lifestyle such that you don't become so jaded, you don't become so molded into what other people expect of you. So one good thing is to explore within yourself. You know, what does this change in this world at this time mean to me? What does this new technology that's all coming up mean to me? How can I embrace it? How can I actually make full use of it to actually communicate or carry on my relationships with other people? And relationships, yes, are very important, because that's what gives us meaning in life, right? And also to be able to carry on meaningful relationships, we need to understand other people as well, and not just ourselves, right? So I think being open allows us to adapt more comfortably, and to be able for us to embrace the change that comes up. Yeah, that's about it for what we can do to meet that change, or and Kani was right in the sense that we don't always have to follow linear progression. Like for me, myself, for instance, I didn't go to university at that age where immediately after JC you go, right? I decided to work first, and then after that maybe get some, get other things done. What of myself? Maybe my romantic life I started paying attention to, and then after that you go on to your career perhaps. Then you realize, okay, but in this day and age, I'm about 40 plus already. So what am I going? I mean, that was back then, years ago. What can be different for me? How can I be more not just satisfied with that daily boring stuff, but okay, is there something that I can actually plunge myself into and be also happy and find meaning in my life? So that's when I decided to go back to school, so to work and study at the same time, and then go through university and then postgrad and everything, so that is something actually is very personal for each individual. So there's no standard ruling for everyone. I mean, if you're happy as a mother and being a grandmother, and not working full-time or part-time, that's fine too, but what is your communication, and what is the meaning that you derive from all of your presence and your families and friends' presence? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Very great insights indeed, especially on being open to change and embracing new norms. So very helpful advice and tips. And certainly we're talking about all the different life transitions that we are all going through. And I think one of the key ones, and one I'm personally going through myself, is the empty nest syndrome. I think, we've been so busy looking after our children, we are taking care of all their needs, etc. And many, truly find it difficult to adjust to this phase in their lives. So any advice on, how women should prepare for it?
But I don't think there's any standard advice, but like we said, it's quite experiential for each person, right? But basically, the important contributor to making things work well and in keeping good balance is how your family dynamic is from the beginning. So I think that's one important factor that needs consideration when one starts building up families. How do you interact with each and every one? Because like Hani was saying, now we're having multi-generational. So whether the very young and the very old, how do they communicate or interact with each other? So it's good to like from the basic, from the very start of your forming of your relationship. When you have a family, what is it that you have in mind with your husband? What are your views, your individual views, and then how you actually adjust them such that it's not always my way, but it's always our both contribution in that sense. And also to realize that if you have children growing up, for instance, as a young mother like you know, after your kids have already grown up, gone to university, and they are your daughters and your sons are adults in their own right, ask yourself whether are you able to actually just have a conversation with them as a friend, adult to adult. It's no longer mommy says so and this is the best way it is, So I don't think our kids don't want that kind of feeling that, oh, I'm doing this because my mommy said so. Then you're kind of like encroaching that child's potential in that sense. You can give your views, you can give your opinion. Like some children, someday they say, yeah, you're gonna say in my old time, in my time and all that. That's already, I think, rather archaic and out of the way already, But be open again, as I said, right, to your daughter's or your son's views about why he thinks it's different from your original back 20 years ago or so, right? And the empty nest syndrome actually allows both husband and wife to pursue their own interests, in the sense that you may have new hobbies. Like we say, experiential learning, going back to school or learning something new doesn't mean you have to go for exams and get certificates and whatever. It's the experience of it all, the ability to communicate with other people and network with other people, find out what's going on out there, instead of staying enclosed in your own shell. Oh yeah, now nobody's at home, I'm left alone. There's no such thing as looking at the poor me syndrome, but rather, okay, this gives me an opportunity to actually go out there, see what I want, see what I couldn't have done 20, 30 years ago because I had other more significant responsibilities. But now you have it, right? But your communication with your kids doesn't mean that once they're married out and leave home, it's no more connection. Of course, there is connection, but you don't meet so often. You don't have each other 24/7 kind of thing. But you come back and you actually share your personal life stories among each other. And imagine a grandfather sharing his stories with his grandchildren. That would be something that's makes for good dinner conversations and all. Yeah. So this is where you just keep the motion going. It's just in a different wheel, it's in a different way. Yeah.
Very good advice indeed. Thank you so much, Linda. And definitely have more questions as well, but we'll come back. But now I think we move on to, my pleasure to introduce our next panelist, Miss Cecilia Pang. So Cecilia is the Chief Communications Officer at Sengkang General Hospital. She is a communications strategist with decades of experience in the corporate and healthcare sector. Cecilia is also president of the Zonta Club of Singapore, an organization of women executives in business and the professions. She believes that women should learn to be less hard on themselves, and 40 is a good time as any other to do so. So, Cecilia, we would love to hear your inputs as a communications specialist. What do you see as the communication challenges a woman faces, whether in the workplace or at home, especially with an increasingly multi-generational family, for example, and more importantly, any tips on how to improve and enhance our communication. Over to you.
Thank you, Julie. And first of all, I'd like to say good morning to everybody as well. And also to thank Wings for this privilege to be on this panel. I've already learned so much from our speakers, just that short moment of time. So when it comes to, I thank you, Kani, for setting the stage about, how we need to think differently about generations being together. And that communications is something that we have to do every day, right? We can't get away with it. And we have to communicate whether at home, at work, socially, and even with ourselves. And that's why I said in my quote, sometimes the most important conversation is the one that goes on in our own head, because it tells you and defines yourself, who you are. And what you think of yourself then gets projected onto how others think about you, and also how you then interact with people. So we have to communicate all the time. And yet the funny thing, the irony of it is that because we do it so often, we don't pay much attention to the skills of communication. And if you do it wrong, it can actually result in a lot of misunderstandings, a whole lot of problems. And but to me, still, communications is just a tool. It's a tool to get somewhere. I think the more important thing is really to pay attention to the context and intent of the communication. So a lot of times we don't even think about that. So what do I mean by this context and intent, right? So I'll just use an analogy of watering a plant. Watering a plant, the act of watering a plant is simple. Just pour water, and then are you done? So sometimes when we talk and we converse and we have conversations, it's a little bit like that. We talk all the time, so talk. But do we even give some thought, some attention to what we are saying, right? So when we water a plant, we often have to think about what kind of plant is this? So we are talking about multi-generational people living together. Which generation is this person, does this person that I'm conversing with belong to? How are they different from me? So you have to think about what kind of a plant this is. Then how much water? If you water too much, you'll kill the plant. You water too little, you will also kill the plant. So if you think about communications in that way, it's the same, right? You talk too much, people will think that, wow, what is this person trying to do, trying to teach me, all the time, how to do this, how to do that. That's verbal diarrhea. Then when you don't communicate, you have verbal constipation. And then people don't know that you appreciate them, you love them. So too much is no good. Too little is also no good. So the beauty is finding that balance, right? How do we find that balance? How do you know how much water your plant needs? It's the same thing. And how do we find that out? You can either study or you can attend conferences like this to find out, wow, what are all the problems? What are all the different kinds of plants in my garden? Or you can also think about observation. Observe what works for the plant, right? So when you do your watering, it reacts this way when I water too much. Oh, it doesn't react too much when I don't, pay too much love and attention to it. So I think that, that is what I mean by communicating with intent and context. So Linda rightly pointed out just now, context is so important because through generations, we have been brought up differently, right? So how people in the maybe baby boomers and before them, the generation demands a lot of respect, for you to talk to them properly. Our younger generation is all about, wow, more efficiency, let's get it done. And, speak up for ourselves a little bit more. So, then there's already that misalignment somewhat. So my basic point here is understand your plant. Who is in your garden, basically? And Julie, you want me to get on to the tips or?
Yes, please share with us the tips, for sure.
Okay, so I was, communications is such a big, you know, it's such a big subject. So I thought, wow, I know how to boil it down, right? So I thought maybe I'll talk about the ABCs of communication. A is about affirming yourself. That is the conversation that is in your head. So you can't love others until you love yourself. So you see the words behind me, be kind to yourself. So it starts with you, it's the same analogy as they use often about the plane. When, the plane has turbulence, you pull the oxygen mask to yourself first before you can help the next person next to you. So the first thing is, what is the conversation that is going on in your head? Is it positive? Is it negative? How do you affirm yourself and be kind to yourself? Don't sell yourself short, right? You are worthy. And I can't say this, often enough because I meet a lot of women. I do some coaching on the side as well. And I meet a lot of women who will tell me, oh, it's not my place to say this. And when I thought about it, I exhibited the same syndrome myself. So when I was asked to, speak on this Wings panel, my first reaction and first response was, why me? I don't think there are better experts than me. Why don't you ask others? And then if you can't find anybody, then maybe so. Then I asked myself again, but why not? Why not me? So I think that self-affirmation is also, very important. When you have an idea, share it, say it, and then people know who you are, right? So the second one then is B. B is balance. Balance is important because then it's not all about you, right? Because you can't survive in this world if you are just if you go to extreme, then you become very self-centered. So it is also about balancing, with others. What do others need? That is the plant in your garden that you need to worry about. What is it that they need? To build relationships, you must know the other party, right? How do they flourish? And then the question is, why do I care about how others flourish, right? Because if you think about it, if the plants in your garden flourish, you get to enjoy it. So you get to enjoy the relationships around you when you let other people flourish. So, we talk again about living together with multi-generations. So think about that. In fact, my CEO just gave me a story the other day. He said he was talking to his junior doctors and he told them, he said, hey, I know you all know your stuff, but sometimes once in a while, the seniors appreciate it when you ask us. We just feel like, okay, we are more alive because we are still contributing. So just ask, make us feel good, and that's what it is all about in relationship building, right? So the last one I would like to say is C, which is choice, right? Choice is the part where, Julie, you said earlier, I don't believe that women should be too hard upon themselves. We always have this nurturing role that we have to undertake. We are the mediator. We are doing everything to please somebody else. Sure, when you want your plant to flourish, you sometimes have to do that. But you must also know when enough is enough. Especially when relationships get to be abusive, stressful, then you know that you have the choice to step away. You have a choice to say, hey, can I use the word shit? Sorry, not being very proper, but is it your shit or my shit? Do I have to take on your demons on my back? Because once you take it on, it's very hard to get it off. It is okay to let others have time and space to work it out themselves. So you don't always feel that you must take on the burden of everybody else. Give them space to work it out. Right, so ABC, affirm yourself, balance with love of others and kindness to others. and see you always have a choice.
Very well said, Cecilia. And I love the fact, I love your ABCs. So now we'll go to questions from the audience. Please feel free to pose questions to our very expert panels on any questions that you may have. I've already some that has come in, but let me ask my first question. So recently, certainly what has been in the news a lot is that famous or infamous interview that Oprah Winfrey did with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It has certainly created quite a stir. But what I thought was sad was that, the breakdown in communication happens even within the most royal of families. And I think this is not uncommon in many families around. So I would love to hear from, any of you on, what can we do? Any tips on how to prevent such a breakdown of communication within families from happening?
While you wait for the more serious and sensible answers, my advice is before you marry a prince, get to know the family. And if you can get along with them, then marry the prince. Otherwise, don't.
There's some truth there, actually. Yeah, so it's difficult because the highest status level of family, or the more royal the family that you are marrying into, obviously there are going to be a lot of expectations, right? And some expectations cannot be met personally. So if you're saying about the breakdown in communication, it also has to be taken charge of by both parties. It's not just the in-law, but the one who is marrying, the one who's bringing the person into the family also needs to do his part in that. This is what I think about my fiance, and this is how I feel about her and all that. And of course, there's some expectation of at least the basic love and respect in that sense, right? So the in-law, the family, the bigger family, the extended family actually has to also consider that I'm taking in, or my son has decided to marry someone whom is not my perfect number one choice. It may not be, but it doesn't matter, because we need to, like what Cecilia was saying, you need to consider the other party's feelings as well. It's not just your own. It's good I take this one as my daughter-in-law so she can, make my family more gracious or become more well-known or something of that sort. So that when there are selfish reasons, then that's where it's going to hurt the communication there. So it's more to listen rather than to think about yourself. So listening to the other person's needs or wants is actually important as well. It's part of communication. So like Cecilia said, it's less talk but more listening. Yeah.
If you try to apply the ABC to this situation, right? So is that affirmation for themselves? Definitely so. And you'll find that in Western countries, they tend to do more of that, right? It's about me, who I am. And you can tell that, let's say a person like Meghan, she doesn't come from the royal family. She wants to assert her own rights, right? So she has a lot of self-affirmation, which is good. But the B is totally missing, right? She doesn't understand the plants in the garden and what they need, right? And then, but the C is then they made a choice. They made a choice to be out of it. But, the choice comes with their own implications, but they have also hurt people along the way. And that is the truth.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said. So we have a question for Kani, which is, the points you made about encouraging intergenerational mingling and more stronger bonding. What more can we do to encourage that? And also, transferring of skills between generations, etc. This is so important. And I think, it's so important to improve that going forward. So what more can be done, you think?
Well, I suppose the question can be answered in various levels. You can do it at an individual level. You can also do it at a societal level and at a policy making level. At the individual level, I think Cecilia and Linda have talked about the ABC and the other aspects of communicating among, and when you talk to your older children, you have to talk to them like they are friends and not like they are children. Now, at a societal level, I think we need to do not segregate society. Like we put older people into just old age homes, we put young children into childcare. Now there is the beginning of trying to mix old age homes with childcare. I think whenever we do any activity, we must stop segregating according to age. We segregate according to interest, according to other criteria, so that age is not important. I mean, like we say, race is not important when we do anything. And now we are trying so hard to make gender less important. So similarly, age must also not be the first criterion whenever you want to organize anything or think. So maybe this seminar should have been open to all women, whether they are younger women or whether they are older women. So I mean, I'm sure you did, and this is specifically for 40, but doesn't mean younger or older people cannot attend. So I think it's just this mindfulness that age should not come into the equation as the first and the only criteria.
Very well said. Age is just a number.
Exactly.
True. Thank you, Kani. And we have a question here on why is it that women need special attention when they age? Men age too, but they just get on with it. Any thoughts?
May I add a few? Because first of all, men don't get on with it. They age badly. They die. They die earlier than women, and so they don't get on with it. And the other thing is why we must pay more attention to women aging is because, as I said, women live longer lives. And because, one, we live longer lives, we end up being alone. Two, although we live longer than men, we have more disability and to some extent disease in our old age. So biology tries to balance. We are living longer lives, but we have more disease and disability. So we end up with osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, depression, and more dementia, partly because we grow older and partly because we are women. So women, and on top of it, women are really the ones who do most of the caring responsibilities. We look after children, we look after older people, we look after the home. So in a way, the care responsibilities are not evenly divided between men and women. So women do end up carrying a bigger burden, intentionally or otherwise. So we do have to pay more attention to their aging. I could go on and on about this is one of my, but I want to hear Cecilia and Linda's, viewpoint on this.
Maybe I will share because I saw that question earlier and I thought it was quite funny. In the sense that as you listen to what I said about communications, it applies to both men and women, right? So it just so happens that this is a women's forum, and therefore we organized it to tell women how we can do better in terms of coping with aging and also coping with communications and interpersonal relations. I think that men need it as much, really. And if we can get ourselves into some men's organization, we would do the same talk. There's no difference in that sense.
Yeah, I like what Kani was saying. Yeah, men actually don't get on with it. Because if you think about it, the man who is so attached to his work, where work defines himself, once he retires, he has nothing to do. He doesn't know what to do. So this is where the difference between men and women, whereas, and the other part is that women are more emotional than men. So men get on with it in the sense that they don't consider emotions or anything of that sort. They just try to be problem solvers all the time, usually, right? Whereas for women, wow, they can multitask, so that there's other things that they can look to after retirement. It doesn't just end there. So the linear cycle, I mean, that linear path is again broken in that sense, So to be able to take on something new and meaningful is actually women are more open to that. But for men, because they're so used to it, generally, and once they stop work or retirement means, what am I going to do? And then some say, oh, I'm going to travel after that. Yes, but then come COVID, what happens to my traveling plans? So it is very different in that sense. Yeah. So that's why the preparation or the thinking ahead is actually quite important, although it may not happen so immediately.
So I was quite serious when I said that we ought to do a similar kind of talk for men, because honestly, I think women tend to have this tendency to socialize a bit more. And therefore, we feel supported even as we age. The guys don't do it. And therefore, so once they lose their job, as Linda said, they are like at a loss. They don't know what to do in a lot of cases. So when they say get on with it, it's get on how? How are they getting on?
Oh, totally agree. I think we should do another forum for men. Maybe there should be another organization like this, like Wings for Men. Call it Mings. No, but well said. Thank you. And we have another question for Linda. Linda, you said we tend to mold ourselves according to what people around us expect of us. How can we not overread too much into these expectations? Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this. Could you touch?
This is a very good question, actually, because it's quite commonly experienced by many people, right? The thing is, besides interpersonal relationships, we also need to look at ourselves for your intrapersonal relationship. That means, how are you as an individual having a relationship with yourself? So Cecilia's points and Kani's points are also important, whereby you need to get to know yourself more. And, ask yourself, if you think you are molding or you are acting according to what other people are molding you, what parts of it do you enjoy? What parts of it do you not enjoy? And if it allows you to change that mold, by all means, because we don't have to cater to one person's total expectations of us. I guess sometimes young children may feel this way, whereby my parents, my father expects me to be a doctor when I grow up like him, for example, right? So these are parts where we try, you can encourage, you can be supportive, yes, but whether really that child wants to be a doctor or a lawyer when he grows up, you need to allow him to experience that, and let him make the choice as an adult. So the tendency to overread, yes, comes in because we feel, you need to ask yourself, do I feel as if I am meeting someone's expectations? At what expense? How much of it is at my own sacrifice or at my own unwillingness, or I'm doing it because he or she says so, because my husband expects me to? But then again, does your husband really expect you to? If you don't do it, for instance, what is the consequence? Are you being taken for granted? So it's very important to have a relationship with yourself. So this intrapersonal relationship as well is important to have for every individual. Yeah, in that way.
Anyone else?
Kani and Cecilia can comment on that, I'm sure.
Cecilia, go first. No, but I think Cecilia's quote, to have that the conversation you have in your head is the most important. Yes. So, and and again, the affirming yourself and the balance and the choice, all these are the intrapersonal conversation we have to become the person that we are, isn't it? So, yeah. Cecilia, you have the last word on it.
No, I think that when we say we affirm ourselves and we know what we want, we must also tell people. That's the part about letting people know what is your own plant, right? So, they may be overwatering you as a stop. And so therefore, but unless they know who you are, they will, impose, what they think upon you. So it starts off with the first conversation, as you said, in your own head. Am I comfortable with who I am? Am I comfortable in telling people what I feel and what I need? And then, yeah, I appreciate, all these things that you're trying to do for me, but here, give me some room to grow and give me some space. So try having that conversation. A lot of times we just react to things rather than talking with deep intent. So I go back to my first few words of intent and context of a conversation.
Cecilia, we know you are a yellow rose, the plant.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think very, very good and helpful tips indeed. And the next question, I think, is an interesting one. I think sometimes the most difficult communication or conversations to have are the difficult ones. So this question is, sometimes we are stuck in unhealthy cycles in terms of hurtful communication and lack of affirmation and support. So would the panelists have advice to share of how to break this cycle?
Maybe I'll take a first shot at it. So you're saying, how do you get out of those hurtful conversations? So just remember, always go back to your ABCs, right? Why do you always feel that affirmation must come from somebody else? We first have to believe in ourselves. But yes, humans are humans, Affirmation from someone else is always is fertilizer to the plant. We need it because without it, we also say, hey, I can't keep growing by myself. I need somebody else to fertilize me. So yeah, so practice it on others first. Affirm others, like I said, let them flourish. And then when they flourish, we can build a better, kind of relationship between the two parties, right? So, and the other part of the conversation is the choice, right? The choice of letting go of things. The hurtful conversation, is it all in your mind and it's playing round and round like a broken record in your own head? Maybe it was said in passing, but we have taken it on and refused to let it go. So I think it really starts with having that openness to change that Linda was talking about. And, letting and telling yourself it's okay for them not to be okay, but I'm not going to react to it.
Yeah, I would think on that same note, sorry, Cecilia, are you going to say something else?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, just to add on to what Cecilia said, there are a lot of times, getting hurt is not an unusual feeling. It's not an unusual situation, right? Because not everyone speaks to us in very sweet words or whichever. That would be too hypocritical to some extent. So when we are hurt, it is good in that relationship with that person, you actually inform that person, let that person know that you're feeling you are hurt. I know, like, something that goes on the lines, right? I know you care for me, but I feel hurt when I hear you say you are not supportive of me in this particular project, for example. So then that's where the conversation goes on and getting to know each other as well. So it's not just keeping it to just the basics only of what the content is. The content is not important, but how you navigate around the content is the one that's more important. Yeah, and that builds up a relationship.
Julie, can I please ask a question of Linda and Cecilia?
Pause, please.
Cecilia, you talked about ABC and I agree, but the choice, I was thinking of, domestic violence, abusive relationships. And why is it that, many people think that, oh, why doesn't the woman walk out of an abusive relationship? Why does she stay on? And often men and society tend to blame the woman for staying in that relationship because they feel she has a choice. Would you please, you and Linda, explain to me and the others why women in abusive relationships don't really have a choice?
I think I'll let Linda go first from a psychological point of view.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. It depends on the individual woman. Okay, for some women, it boils down that at least I have someone rather than I have no one. So I may have someone who's abusing me, who treats me badly, but somehow that belief that I have someone or I have a husband or being married is also something fulfilling to some extent. It could be a false fulfillment, right? To accept this unpleasant and abusive behavior. But at the same time, there are parts of it that the woman can actually see some good in that man. But on her own, she's unable to actually help him change or whichever. And that's why we need our supportive networks to come in and actually, whether you bring in family therapy or couple counseling or something of that sort, right? But that part about, I'm not quite sure what age group you're referring to, Kani, but there are some women who feel that having something bad is better than having nothing at all. That kind of thinking, which is of course harmful. So in which case, this woman would actually benefit from actually discovering more about herself. Is this really, do you really want to get tied down to this kind for the rest of your life, or is there something that you can do? And it gets complicated when there are children involved, because sometimes society also shuns children from divorced families and all that kind of thing as well. Yeah, so it's hard in that way.
So I think Linda has explained the why. So how to get out of it. And I still go back to my A, which is you got to affirm yourself and believe in yourself. And, am I worthy? Do I need to be in this relationship where I get, smacked around? And I have to tolerate it? Don't I deserve better? So I think that is the conversation that has to go on inside the head.
So that's where women need a lot of support in that sense, to help them try and observe what is the reality going around, and that they do have control over the situation rather than allowing that situation to control them that way.
That's the other part of the C, choice and control.
That's true.
Very much so. And, all very well said. And I think at the end of the day, perhaps the most important and challenging relationship we all have is really with our spouse. And we actually have two questions here about, how to kind of, I suppose, manage better the communication with men, the husbands or our spouse. So one is, I understand men and women age differently. I understand men and women also are different in many ways. So how do we cope with the difference? So thank you for this person who shared to say she is in her 40s and her husband is in his 50s. So any thoughts?
So maybe I need to understand the question a little bit more. It is relating to her husband and want to know how to build a better relationship.
Or how to cope with differences, especially, I suppose, between, husband and wife.
So I still want to go back to the choice. Do you have to take on their demons, right? And feel like you have to bear that burden. And, it's always about working out what is it that you like and you enjoy? What's it that I like and I enjoy? And be okay with the differences. The hibiscus and the rose can exist side by side and both are beautiful. It doesn't have to be one without the other. I cannot demand that you turn into a rose because I am a rose. I'm going to give you another analogy of something that I learned sometime before. It's got to do with the garden still, right? And in this garden, the hibiscus wants the rose to like her, right? And the hibiscus thought, hey, if I want rose to like me, what can I give to the rose? So hibiscus said, I will give the rose my best, the best of myself. So what is the best of yourself? The best of yourself is hibiscus. And you keep giving the rose your hibiscus flowers, right? And then the rose is like, okay, thank you. At first it was quite attractive, but now you keep giving me hibiscus flowers all the time when what I want is rose, But is it possible for hibiscus flowers to give a rose? It's not. it's not sustainable. So, you know, you can try, and then you understand that one day you just have to sit down and say, hey, my best of myself is hibiscus, and I'm giving it all to you. But if you don't like it, you can set it aside, you can give it on to somebody else, or you just learn how to appreciate, you know, the hibiscus. And I think that, you know, that is the kind of thinking. Sometimes I use apples and oranges too. Of, yeah, it's like our moms, you know, I always give my friends this analogy. My mom has passed on, bless her heart, but when she was alive, she keeps thinking that her best contribution to me is to cook me soup. So when I go back from a long day's work, you know, there's always soup available, and she'll say, what kind of soup do you want to drink? I made soup for you today. And la la la, she goes on and on about her soup, right? And I'm like, I'm so tired after a long day's work. I don't need soup. Don't ask me what kind of soup to cook, because you just decide, you know. But they want you to be part of the conversation, so they keep asking you, what kind of soup do you like, you know, so that I can cook the right one for you, etc. But you had too much soup conversation.
Hey, but look at what it did to your skin, Cecilia.
Yeah, that is her expression of love. That's her love language to me. I think it's,
yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Linda.
You know, I think appreciation of each other's characteristics is important, right? We don't want to have an enmeshed relationship whereby I can only do this if you say so, and you can only do this if we can only do this if we are together in it. No, you are still two separate individuals, but you come together, yes, at a later point, and, you know, share your experiences and all. But one question for us is to understand where each other is coming from and what is the difficulty there, and how can each one support, you know, be supportive or try to do something that can enhance that challenge that the man or woman may have. Yeah.
If you have finished, Linda.
Yeah, I have. Thank you.
Then from non-expert point of view, I agree completely.
Experiential point.
What you said, that the lovely hibiscus rose analogy and yours. And I think I just want to make 2 points. First, sounds crazy. Some women are mad, M-A-D, male approval desire. Because sometimes we women are being brought up so much to ask for male desire that we don't affirm ourselves, and what they say, it matters. The second point I have noticed is that when men and women are courting before they get married, often women think, oh, I don't really like this about this and that about him, but I will be able to change him. And then, they get married, but it's not always possible, to change your partner. You have, they are as they are. So if you marry with that belief, then it's not going to work out. I mean, of course, the 2 experts can add to it, but that's what I think. They will not change.
That is very true, Kani. Yeah. That's why some marriages run into difficulties, because like some couples that I counsel, they, one of them will say, oh, I thought he would change after we get married. Oh, I thought she would change after we get married. But then it's already too late, So getting to know each other and, like Cecilia says, the communication, learning about each other and all that is more important than just carrying on the honeymoon phase blindly.
Yeah, so don't be delusioned into thinking the hibiscus can change into a rose.
Yeah, you're right.
It's beautiful in its own way, so appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, that's true. Because hibiscus comes in different colors as well, right? So,
and even technology cannot change a hibiscus into a rose, and vice versa.
So thank you, everyone. I love the flower and garden analogy. I think it's really good, and I think very helpful for all of us to think about it when we are dealing with our husbands, spouses and friends even, and know that, we can plant the seeds, we can keep watering them, and then let's be surprised at what, our garden brings us, right? So thank you so much. And maybe now we turn to the workplace. We have a couple of questions on that. One is, what if the person who said hurtful things to us is our boss? How can we manage our bosses better?
Being a boss, I work myself. Maybe I have to say that, yeah, sometimes unthinkingly, I can also hurt my team members, but I don't think, unless the boss is really a nasty person, I don't think that they do it with the intent to hurt, right? So sometimes they have to correct, sometimes they have to coach, and it all depends on how you want to interpret the coaching in a sense. And you can also tell the person that, hey, you know what you said just now hurt me. Same as what we said earlier, right, about the husband and wife relationships and everything. It's all the same, really. And then he said, well, what you said just now hurt me. I get that point about what you're trying to say, but maybe don't say it in front of everybody, or, can you soften your tone? Sometimes bosses do appreciate it when you do tell them, because they may not even realize that they are doing all this. So affirm yourself and balance it.
Linda, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking of an example or situation whereby a friend encountered. It's true that sometimes, people who say hurtful things aren't necessarily the happiest or the wisest of people as well, right? They also go through some difficulties or some challenges. So the thing is, perhaps it may be helpful to maybe get to know your boss a little better. And when you have, the chance to have a private conversation, you can bring it up to him, to say that, well, this boss, male or female, whatever it is, but you can mention that, going back, using your basic elements of love and respect for people as well. So you try to talk to your boss in such a way that he would be maybe open up to you a little bit, or listen to you at some points, or actually bring to his attention the real struggle that you're going through, and how it can actually impact on this work relationship. Yeah. So so the idea of actually getting to know him and maybe find out exactly what's happening, then bring it out in a private conversation.
And sometimes it's amazing what you can find out, because, if you go up to your boss and say, hey, what you said just now, hurt me, the person may say, wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't mean it that way. So be open to having that conversation. And then at the end of it, let it go. Really let it go. Let it go from your mind. The worst thing is that broken record that keeps playing in your mind.
Yeah, because when you have that conversation with your boss, you may find that he's actually under a lot of stress as well. So the hurtful things that he says to you is actually coming from his stress and frustration, and not directed at you per se.
Cecilia and Linda, after you have told of course this is in a private conversation, after you've told your boss, hey, what you said was hurtful to me, can you go on to say, can you explain why you said that? In what way am I deficient? Can you not have a conversation to find out why that was said? Because, you cannot say, and if there's no basis, or can you go to the human resource department? And is that another avenue that one could go to? I'm just wondering.
Well, I will leave it to Cecilia to answer about the HR part.
Yes.
I'm not from HR, but there are, of course, we hope that it doesn't get to the point where you have to approach HR and make this formal. I think begin with that informal conversation first. And then, honestly, it all boils down to 3 in the end, right? The C in the end. You have a choice. You can choose to stay with this boss, or you can leave. Because sometimes there are just different personalities that are like oil and water and just cannot mix. And then you have to recognize that as well and say, okay, if this is really making me so unhappy, so stressed, do I have a choice to go somewhere else? But you give it a chance first, give it a shot first. Try to build it. And then, that use the B. And then after that, use the C.
Thank you. I think all very useful tips. And we have another one on the workplace. This round about someone shared that I wonder why my seniors at work, the older women, tend to keep quiet at meetings, but they got so much to share. Are they likely to be risk adverse? Don't want to upset anyone, or would rather keep their views to themselves for more peace in the office? This sounds like a generational type issue. Look, any views on this one?
If I may say so, since being the oldest here, I think it is a generational issue, because even when you bring up children, and you tend to make the girls listen, respect, keep quiet. Boys will be boys. They're allowed to shout. They're allowed to play. And this continues even in school. They have done videos to show that teachers always pay more attention when boys talk and less attention. So we are socialized into keeping quiet and, and only speak when we think it's really necessary. So I think this is our socialization, and that is why there is, to some extent, gender inequality, because often women don't negotiate for higher pay, and just now we were saying that, we don't go on, so I think it is general, socialization, and because women have been given a secondary role in life in general. I think that's one.
Actually, my own observation is that sometimes the older people don't speak, but the younger people are also not speaking. And sometimes in a team meeting, I'm like, come on, people, if you have an idea, share. Unless you share, people don't know who you are. People don't know, what kind of person, how good or how capable you are, unless you start sharing your ideas, right? So I asked the younger ones actually, why are you so reluctant to share? And said two reasons they give. Number one is, no lah, people think I gay kiang, I have artificial intelligence. Or no, I'm not going to speak up because the work will end up on me. So to the older ones, maybe they are also thinking of the same thing. If I speak up, I may end up having to do that job, or having to take on that project, or having to go and explore. So sometimes the way I explain to them is, but you should be so happy that people come to you for more advice. You should be so happy that people come to you to lead a project. You don't want to be the person who's always left in the corner and nobody comes to you for anything. So if you enjoy, the work that you do, it always helps.
It's an interesting question here, actually. I mean, if you feel that the older women have got so much to share, and I don't know, maybe that meeting has got some rules and regulations that they are observing. I'm not quite sure what the context is like. But, maybe as a young one or the younger one, you can ask them, just ask them directly, what do you think of this? And then get their opinion on it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it just calls for you to just break the ice in that sense. Yeah, because sometimes there may be also the common notion that, yeah, you're so old and old-fashioned, no need to say anything else. We are the young new ones, and we want to effect things in a different manner. So it all depends, right? So, rather than keep the views to themselves, if you say for more peace in the office, well, did anything happen that indicated that peace was disrupted, harmony was disrupted? Then perhaps as this concerned person, you can actually break the ice and ask them, what's their opinion for a certain thing? Things can always be discussed and not just talk bad upon, or just, giving feedback is more than, rather than just staying critical of whatever it is.
Great point, Linda.
There's one, people use the word mansplaining, because men love to explain and they talk. So that's how the word. So women, somebody has to listen. So I think sometimes women being socialized to listen, let men explain. That's another reason that could be so.
Well said, well said. And actually on the other side of the spectrum, there's a question on, do women talk less actually when they get older because they have fewer people or opportunities to talk to? I think that's a bit sad, and hopefully it can, change down the road. But any thoughts on how we can actually encourage maybe the older people around us to speak more, to, I suppose, get more input?
If I may quote a statistic, right now, there are more women who live alone than men in Singapore. So as you said, this being solitude and being alone is not a good thing but that's just, let the other two experts give their views, whether about women, older women and talking. Linda and Cecilia, you two the experts.
Linda, you have some psychological studies that gives evidence of that, but I
think women don't generally talk less. I mean, I'm just thinking about the circle I'm in, and we are all in our 60s, and so I don't find any of us talking any lesser, compared to the ones that we mix around in our 40s and all that. Maybe because they become more, as they age gracefully, they become better listeners as well. So they don't talk so much, right? But they do listen. And that's what makes a woman different from men, actually. And about fewer people to talk to, maybe because unless you're staying alone, like Kani was saying, that's possible. And whether, unless they have lost their husbands and children have flown from the nest, that's another possible reason as well, no one to talk to. So that's why it's important to actually, if you are in that kind, as a woman in that position, it's good to get yourself involved in other activities, right? Rather than just stay and all this kind of thing. Yeah, because keeping connected is very important, right? Rather than just staying alone and, and not having anyone around you. So it's good to get out of that belief that, oh, I will talk less when I grow older, or I'm talking less because I'm older, or something of that sort. But more like, what do you actually want? What can you do? Because interaction is very important for any age group, actually. Yeah.
But
in general, I go back to the same thought. Sorry. Go back to the same thought on intent and context. Context is very important, because as the older generation, they may also feel like, wow, these younger people are talking about things I don't know about and I don't understand. These technological terms that they are using, what is to insta something. Of course, we know it's referring to Instagram, but they can get a bit lost in that conversation, and perhaps that is also making them keep quiet, so that they don't show that ignorance at home.
But in general, when an older couple live together, it's usually, after retirement, as you said earlier, Cecilia, men don't have very much to do. They are the ones who become grumpy old men, and they keep on complaining that women talk too much. So it depends, I think, on the scenario.
Yeah.
And the reasons that both of you have said, you become more reflective, you feel you're not part of the conversation. And I think the younger people think we are not woke. So
what does that mean?
No, thank you very much. It's amazing how time has flown, and we are almost at the end. And I'd like to end by asking maybe each of you to share perhaps one key thought or point from today's session, or what may be useful for the audience before we wrap up. So maybe Kani, you could go first.
Well, I wish I'd prepared for it. I forgot. But I think what we have to think is a whole new life awaits us. It's an exciting life. We can make a lot of it, but we must be aware of it and use the principles of ABC to make the most of it.
Very nice. Well said. Linda?
I mean, it's just very simply, just stay connected and, just go for whatever you want. Yeah.
Cecilia?
Okay, as usual, I make it a little bit more fun. Don't take life too seriously, honestly. And so, can you imagine if the next conversation you have with somebody who is a little bit challenging for you, and you begin to visualize that person as the plant? Water this plant needs for it to flourish. Think about that. Then it might actually take the stress out of the situation for yourself as well.
As long as it's not a thorny plant.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you've given us pearls of wisdom. I mean, the multi-stage life and really, how we need to prepare for that, being open to change, embracing new norms. And then the ABCs, I love that. And, really keeping our garden and plants well watered, balanced, and, all of us just to be able to enjoy a beautiful garden down the road. So thank you so much, all to every one of you. I think you real experts in the field, and thank you, especially to Wings and Access Health for bringing this great series of webinars for Women at 40 together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, a quick note that you can also watch if you didn't have a chance to watch all the 4 webinars, you can catch it on our Wings website. So go into www.wings.sg. Thank you and have a lovely weekend ahead.